well, I don't think you ever fully abolish the inner critic, but at least to put that critic in his or her proper place, so that I could have the freedom to write and publish. So I really am excited about the possibility of recovering some of that material.
Everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have someone here on the podcast that has some roots here in Canada, which makes me happy. And we're going to talk about her journey as an author and all the great things happening for her. And you're going to fall in love with another great author. So you're in the right place if you're looking for a great new author to check out and get some great books. Lily's here on the podcast. Lily, welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
Thank you, Dave.
Glad to have you here. Can you tell everybody where you are in this big world of ours?
I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Beautiful. And you said it's kind of warm lately.
Well, we just had unusually hot weather for us. Unusually hot.
Yeah, in October. Yeah, there you go. Good. Awesome. We always like to start here with our conversation with our authors. There was a point in time when being an author wasn't really something that you were pursuing, but now here you are with multiple books. You're out there in the world. What was that for you? What was that spark that said, hey, I want to become an author?
Well, it happened a long time ago. And I've been reading, I've kept journals since my early 20s. And I've been reading, I have piles and piles and piles of journals that I've been rereading and revisiting my early life, and amazed at what I've discovered about how much I wanted to be a published author, but how little confidence I had that could ever happen. So it was a lengthy process for me to finally, accept that being a writer is just part of who I am, a main part of who I am. And then, pursuing the various avenues to making them a possibility, which included then taking classes. And eventually I got a BA in English with an emphasis on creative writing, and then I got a master's in creative writing, as well as another master's in the humanities, because I realized that if I were going to be a writer, I needed to have something to write about, and not just myself, but the humanities then gave me a liberal arts background that I thought was really important. And so I just, the problem for writers, for most writers, is getting published. And there are, roadblocks along the way. And I certainly went through all of them. I early on, I did have agents. In fact, my first agent was Canadian. And because I was working on material that had Canadian setting. But I soon discovered that agents come in different colors. Mm-hmm. I don't mean that in terms of race, but in terms of what they're capable of doing and just how grounded they are. And I unfortunately ended up with one who was very enthusiastic about my material and, wonderful in that way, but really didn't have a clue how to go about being a responsible and good agent. And, in fact, I've written about that experience on my blog. I keep a blog where I post weekly something about reading and writing. So, but, then I had American agents interested, and I had a very well-known New York agent who really was interested in I don't know if you can see behind me this wonderful picture, Curva Pelagrosa. He was very interested in that book, but unfortunately, that was 2009. And I don't know if you remember, but there was a real financial downturn. Like, downturn is probably a mild way of putting it. And so New York publishers weren't willing to try out a new author. They didn't have some substantial background, which I didn't have yet. But he sent it out. He got some nice responses, but he wasn't, after trying for a year, he wasn't able to sell it. But so that was sort of a turning point for me. I realized I had written 2 other novels by then, and I realized that maybe agents are the way to go, that approaching small presses could be more successful. And in fact, I was successful then in publishing my first novel. Fling was the first one I got published, and that happened in 2015. Mm-hmm. And then the publisher for Fling, Pinnell Publishing, they gave me a contract for 3 books. And so Fling, Free Fall, yep. And then The Ripening, A Canadian Girl Grows Up. They were the 3 novels that they published. I found another small press that published Curva Pelagrosa, and the reason I went with them is because they had a more complex developmental editing approach, and I knew that narrative needed more help than my other books did. Hmm. And then I'm a poet, and that's really where my deepest heart is in poetry. And I've had 2 major collections of poetry published, and then I've also had small, what do they call those? Small ones. Yeah. And so and so most recently, then a year ago, I had my first memoir. I call it a hybrid memoir because it isn't exactly just about me, my personal life or whatever. It's called Dreaming Myself into Old Age, One Woman's Search for Meaning. So there's a lot of philosophical rumination going on in it. And also I capture in the book, at age 72, I started a new analysis with a Jungian analyst. And the reason was because of my fears of aging and dying. And so the book, Dreaming Myself into Old Age, grew out of that relationship. And I, talk about that as well in the book. Wow. Take readers behind the scenes. And so the same publisher that published that book also published my latest poetry collection, California Dreaming. And it's a wonderful small press that just prints books that are focused on art and nature. Those 2 books are published by Shanty Arts Publishing, and they're located in Maine.
So as an author, you've seen kind of a progression from working with agents all the way through now to kind of more self-publishing world we have now. Do you think it's easier for people to write now as authors? Is it easier to get in and get your books published? Is that a good thing, or does that have a downside as well? Make it that it's easier to write a book as an author? Well,
writing a book is not easy. Mm-hmm. I spent on each of my novels years working on them. And if you don't have that kind of commitment to the material, to the characters, you're not going to get very far. Yeah. So I would like to erase any ideas that, if you're wanting to write a novel or a longer work, it takes real discipline and real determination to carry that through, and a willingness to sacrifice other things in your life in order to do that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's so when you say, is it easier? Um, I mean, my concern is that with self-publishing, I've seen a lot of self-published books, and I teach writing. I teach, I've taught grammar, taught college students. I'm still teaching older adults, but not the grammar part, just the writing part. And so I'm seeing a lot of self-published books that haven't been edited properly. And as a writer and an editor too, it bothers me that there isn't some kind of a safeguard against that happening. So, yes, you can put out a book at any time, if you're able to stick to it and create a book-length work. But whether it should be published is another question.
Right.
And I just would urge people who are wanting to self-publish to then be sure that they work with a good editor first, so they get the kind of feedback they deserve, because writing is all about rewriting. Mm-hmm. And, I've written tons of things that I thought, oh, this is wonderful, and it's going to get published and blah, blah, blah. And quickly learned that, no, this still has a long way to go before it's really found its center, before it's really discovered its voice. Yeah.
What would you say? Yeah, that's perfect. That was great. What would you say are some healthy writing tips for an author that's new to writing? Some things that you would suggest to do on a regular basis when you write? Any kind of tips that you'd have for a young or a new author?
Read.
Okay.
Read carefully, and read voluminously, and read. You can't develop as a writer if you aren't reading other writers and learning from them, and trying out new things. There are tons of wonderful books, how-to books. Some of them aren't so great, but many can be very beneficial. I always was inspired by reading anthologies where writers were writing about some aspect of writing, their own development as a writer, or whatever. I always felt that was, really useful for me to get an inside look from someone who's had more experience than I have. And of course, taking workshops. There's, you don't have to any longer with Zoom and other services. You no longer have to go sit in a classroom. You can easily join workshops online, and often get some really good feedback too as a result.
Good. That's all around community and finding other authors and doing this. You don't have to do this alone, right?
No, and you can set up your own writing groups too. Find other people in the same boat as you who are aspiring writers, and help each other. That kind of community can be extremely useful if it's handled the right way. If people are encouraging with each other, and not hypercritical.
Any other healthy tips we can have in addition to reading? Is there anything else, like as an author, to stay motivated and continue writing? Patience.
And I have to say, anything that you can do that develops the imagination. For me, art is just essential in my life. The various arts, from music to painting to sculpture to literature. And so I expose myself a lot because I love it. It's not, something I'm just sort of hitting myself over the head with, but I love the arts, and they do nourish our imaginations, and I think enlarge them too. So anything you can do along that line to feed yourself, I think is really important, really valuable.
It's interesting, as adults, I think we have to relearn our imagination. When
We
we're
do.
children,
I know.
are just naturally gifted with imagination, and then their parents or society or teachers or adults
You
kind
know,
of seem to put a little bit of a cover on that.
you know,
They don't extinguish it, but they don't promote it as
well,
much,
no,
right?
sometimes they extinguish it too. You know,
Okay, there you
but
go. Yeah,
absolutely.
we
Absolutely.
need to
I mean,
fan that and bring it back.
yeah, I mean, that's why dreams have been such a super source for me ever since I was a young woman. I don't know why, but I naturally was drawn to writing down my dreams every morning. And
Really?
I still do. And you can't have anything that's closer to you. I mean, we all dream every night. We may not remember many of them, but we still have those dreams. And if we invite them in, they'll come and visit too. But they're a tremendous source of imagination food. Yeah.
How have your dreams then kind of manifested in your writings with all the amazing books you have? Is there elements of your dreams showing up in the books that you've written?
Well, it's hard to make that. I have written poetry
Okay.
from directly from dreams, but in terms of fiction, unless there was a character in a dream that made me curious, maybe not so much. But I think I've also written children's stories, and as I think about that, I feel as if that material is more likely to come sometimes almost directly from the dream maker. And maybe because, as you pointed out, when we're young, we're much more imaginative and open to the imagination.
Yeah.
But in any case, dreams, for a variety of reasons, because they speak symbolically, they speak metaphorically, they can help you to develop those qualities in yourself.
Yeah. When we're young, we're children to pick up a stick on the side of the road and we have a new toy, right?
That's
We can
right.
make it anything we want, right?
Right.
So I just think as adults, especially as writers, pick up those sticks that you find along the way, whatever those are, and use those as inspiration to share your story.
Could be a baton. You might become a conductor,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Conduct the orchestra, right? Yeah. It's great. It's great. So for a new reader that's coming to you as a first-time author, they haven't read your books yet. Do you have a starting point? Like, is there a book that you would direct a new reader to where you say, of all the books I've written, I would really suggest you start with this book as maybe your first book for my library as an author?
Well, all of my books, except for The Ripening, A Canadian Girl Grows Up, have a strong element of magical realism in them. Okay. So I think that readers, potential readers, would need to be open to that level of mixing reality with what we might think of as unreality. So maybe they should start with The Ripening. A Canadian Girl Grows Up, since there's not much of that in that book. And in fact, previous fans of my work weren't able to read. Were very unhappy with The Ripening because it didn't have that magical realism aspect. So that's, I guess that would be my advice. And just read with an open mind and let the narrative take you someplace in yourself that you may not have visited or may not have had the ability to visit without, meeting these characters. And there's a lot of humor too in my narratives. I'm not. I don't think it's so much laugh out loud, but it's just a lot of undercurrents of humor.
That's great.
Yeah.
Tell me some of the authors that inspire you as an author.
Oh, well, I have to say, speaking of magical realism, 100 Years of Solitude. You can help me with the name, which isn't coming to me right on.
Yeah, me too.
I know, it's one of those. Anyway, but he's just, in terms of magical realism, he's really a god. So I've read a lot of his work, but I've read in a lot of different genres. So I'm not just locked into reading work that's magical realism. And I've certainly been inspired by the traditional authors, Faulkner, James Joyce, et cetera. These are sort of the standard ones. You can learn so much from them. They're giants because they were really masters of what they were doing.
How does it feel to know that there's the potential, there's someone who looks to you as an author and says that you inspire them as an author? How does that sit with you as an author, knowing that the potential is there for someone to say the exact same thing about you?
It's something I don't think about. It's funny. I don't think about that. I mean, I'm teaching, still teaching, it's not something that I think about. Maybe I need to think about that.
Because I'm thinking, as a teacher, you have, just because you're there and you're instructing and you're guiding, there's influence there, just in the fact that students are looking to you, right, as an example. So it's kind of nice to know that not only are you writing and sharing your stories, but now you're helping other authors at the same time. So that influence, I think, has a ripple effect out into the author community.
Well, the thing, most recently I'm teaching older adults and mainly focusing on memoir, but right now I'm teaching the prose poem. And I've taught flash nonfiction and et cetera. For them, this whole process, they're not so interested in my writing. They're interested in each other's work. Mm-hmm. And they always meet in small groups, and it's the community that forms from these small groups, and they're being able to share parts of their lives so intimately with these fellow travelers. That's what excites them the most. I'm just sort of there. They love to get my feedback, and I meet with them one-on-one and talk about different drafts and so on. But it's not my writing that they're curious about. It's the lives, each other's lives, the portions that they get to dip into from the workshops. That's what really excites them.
As you continue writing, what kind of things are coming up down the road for you as an author? Are you working on new projects?
I am, and I need more time. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I have stacks of journals.
Yeah, right.
And I've gone through most of them now, but I've discovered in going through them that there's a tremendous amount of material that would be helpful for aspiring authors, because I really went through a process before I finally was able to abolish. Well, I don't think you ever fully abolish the inner critic, but at least to put that critic in his or her proper place, so that I could have the freedom to write and publish. So I really am excited about the possibility of recovering some of that material, and nice. With that intention of helping other writers. But then there's just so much material to work with, and I just need more time.
And here you are on a podcast, taking some of that precious time to share with us, which I'm so happy you can do that.
Well, Dave, thanks for doing these podcasts. That's really a labor of love for you.
Yeah, I get to meet great people in the process, which makes my life better. So that's the joy for me. And I love the idea that a podcast can bring a new reader into your world who then can fall in love with you. Yeah. That's the whole point of this.
Yeah. It's sort of an amazing synchronicity that happened. You know,
Yeah. Before we wrap up here,
well, I'm still
you got it. Yeah, was it
100 years of solitude.
Gabriel Garcia?
Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
There it is.
Gabriel
There you go.
Garcia Marquez, 100 years
There you
ago.
go. We got it. We got it. We got it. See, we got it together eventually. We got it. I love it. As we kind of wrap up here in a few minutes, I'm curious to know from your perspective as an author, the value that you get in getting feedback from readers through reviews, through comments, when people reach out to you and tell you what your book means to them. What does that do for you as an author?
Well, there's two more parts to that question than you may be aware of.
Okay, good.
Reviews are essential for published writers. And, that's how you invite others to read your work, to hear from people who've already done that and loved it and so on. Unfortunately, I've discovered that a lot of people get really nervous. Writing is scary for lots of people if they're not writers themselves. And so they can get too scared to put down a few words in a review. And so I would just say to those people, just say it. And you don't have to give an extensive, you don't have to write an essay, just a few lines, letting the reader know how that work affected you. It's essential for writers to get that kind of support if you want them to continue writing and publishing and selling books. I look for feedback from fellow writers, especially, but not always, because sometimes people who aren't experienced at writing can bring you insight that you otherwise might not have gotten because, there's sort of a pro forma way of approaching a critique and what you look at and the pacing and the rhythms and this and that. And sometimes the innocence of a non-writer can pick up on things that an experienced writer might not. And so I think that I would love more of that kind of feedback myself. And I still have a writing group that I work with, and certainly really respect the thoughts that they have on the things that I submit. It's essential to get that kind of feedback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that we can do that as readers. We can definitely encourage our authors in our lives.
Yes.
And I know when I go to make a purchase online, for example, I look at the reviews. I want to know what other people thought of this product or service.
I know.
Restaurant, everything, right? It helps us to shape our decision. So
that's right. You don't want to buy something that's a dud.
Right. And all of your books are obviously not duds because they're amazing. So there we go. We have that very clear. It's great. So as far as connecting with you, I know we have people listening to the show and they hear you on here, they're part of your community, or they're new and they want to reach out to you and be in touch with you. Is there a way for people to talk to you and reach out?
Well, I've mentioned that I have a blog that I post in weekly, and it's very easy to access. It's my whole name, Lily, Lily, Iona, Iona, MacKenzie, MacKenzie.com.
Very easy.
Very easy.
There you go. You got the name.
.com.
Awesome.
I'd love
we'll make
to.
Sure. Yeah. We'll make sure we put those information in the notes as well, so people can reach out to you and connect with you. But wrap us up, Lily. What would you like to say to the authors that are listening, and then also to the readers that are listening? Two different groups of people listening right now. How would you like to wrap this up? What would you like to say to these people that are here with us?
Well, I'd like to say to both of those groups, patience, because sometimes as a reader, when you start reading something that in a style that you're not familiar with, the impulse may be just to push it away. But it's the same thing with meeting a new human being. The first impression might not be that engaging, but you'll find after you hear the person talk for a while, you learn about the person's experiences and so on. Oh, I really want to know this person better. So I think you have to bring that kind of attitude as a reader to whatever you read, to let your judgment, put your judgment aside until you've seen enough. And then, you can make a determination of whether that work is for you or not. And I think for writers, the same thing is true in terms of patience, that you have to be patient with yourself. You have to be patient with where, this material comes from, the unconscious, whatever. And you have to give yourself room to grow and to change. And again, to not give up on yourself. You might write something that you think is really weird, but if you have a good editor, writer friend, whatever, they may be able to say, "Oh, gee, this is great. I love this new direction that you're taking." So new things can be a turnoff for writers and readers. And so sometimes you just need to not judge too quickly, and then after experiencing it for a while, see whether it's going to be part of your world or not.
That's great. I love it. Lily, thank you so much for being part of the podcast. Thank you for all of the things you do to help authors as you're up teaching and leading our next group of authors coming up, and for being a great example as an author yourself with your own works. It's great to have you on the show, and I'm so happy that we can talk about your books here on the podcast.
Thanks. Lovely being with you, Dave. And I wish you much success, too.
Thank you so much. Everyone, all the information for Lily, all the information will be in the show notes, all the links, everything to follow up with her and where to purchase the books as well. Everything will be included there. Please, when you buy Lily's books, because you need to buy them all, you're going to leave great reviews for them as well. So that'll help Lily and her community to grow. So Lily, again, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Dave.
Hey, thanks for being here for the Living the Next Chapter podcast. So glad to have you as part of our family of listeners. There's a seat for you just here on Living the Next Chapter, and I'm so happy that you have listened to all the way to the end. Wow, you are now my new bestie. I want to let you know that I host 7 other podcasts on top of Living the Next Chapter. Yep, 8 total. One of them is called the How To Podcast series. If you are thinking, you know what, Dave, this podcast thing seems like a lot of fun, well, I'll give you a secret. It is. It's a great, amazing, fun time where you can get to meet great people, get your word out there, promote your book, promote what your coaching program, whatever you're doing. Podcasting is great. And if you want to learn how to do this, what you're hearing right now, head over to howtopodcast.ca and look up the How to Podcast series on YouTube, whatever app you're listening on. You'll find me there. And I'd love for you to come listen to how to do this. And if you're interested and have questions on how to podcast, reach out to me at howtopodcast.ca. Thank you for listening. Talk soon.